Well, hey, thanks for joining us on 2Age Sojourner. We're up and running with this video thing. Second time, and it's getting a little bit more streamlined. My noticed yesterday, if you were watching that thing with Chris and I, the video itself was just wobbling, and so I saw that, is what I'm saying, and it duly noted. I don't know exactly how I'm going to fix it, but it's basically because my floor wobbles when the table wobbles, and I get excited and I press down on, Anyways, I'll save you the long sub story, but we're getting there. Every time we're getting more and more organized. Thanks for bearing with us. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool having something on the YouTube channel now. We've been talking about it for a while, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking about it for ages, so it's awesome to do.
It's awesome just to get something out there, and it's it's weird. It's just kind of cool. Sometimes you feel like watching the video, and now it's on there. So for at least, it's not great, but there it is. But let's play the riff, bro.
Let's do it.
Oh, that's not the right riff. Hang on one second. Once again, for the edit, let's play the riff, bro.
Let's do it. There goes.
Doesn't that just get you in the zone right there?
Yeah, it's awesome.
It just lifts
Really
the
good.
weight of the day, Guide me, oh thou great Jehovah. So what I was thinking that we could talk about on that point is some prayer tools.
Oh,
Because we've kind of been talking about that anyway off the record. So I thought maybe it'd be good to just, I suppose coming off Jordan's, there was a little bit of discussion with Chris and myself, and with you and myself, about the small catechism and its use.
yeah.
Chris made a great recommendation regarding a Lutheran prayer book. I know you're into your Anglican Common Prayer book of Common Prayer at the moment. Of course, you got Value of Vision, which is the Puritan staple. And then, the place of is there a place for a rosary? We made a casual mention of that. I know, you've got a rosary. I want your rosary. And I want to try it out. So, anyways, well, all that kind of stuff we could talk about.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, that's, it's true. We don't talk enough about just like aspects of, just being a Christian. We talk a lot about some pretty heady theology. So it'd be good to get onto like just basic devotional subjects, how to live the Christian life subjects from time to time.
Pilgrim
And,
theology. Pilgrim theology.
Pilgrim theology, man. And prayer's been an interesting one for me all the way through, because I find it like a mixture of something intuitive that I just find myself doing and have to do, and then also something that I find extremely difficult to do. Like I don't know if you have that. It's kind of like it's like trying to breathe, but at the same time being allergic to oxygen. It's like it's like there's this real tension, like where you're just like, man, I love to pray. I find myself just instinctively praying, but at the same time, like when I'm trying to pray, I find it very difficult. So like it's thinking about how to pray and helps towards prayer is a big thing.
I do find that in terms of just that natural, that instinctive prayer. Obviously there's no, I shouldn't say obviously. I know some people don't do that. It feels weird that you could even not do that, for me, to be honest. It's been so long. I think probably what that replaces in my before Christ mindset was just worrying about stuff. I suppose you just churn things over, and that's happening all the time anyway. And now you're praying, and obviously you're still worrying. You're not perfect, but it's that's largely filling that space. That feels quite natural. I don't feel like I struggle with that. What I do find though is that in terms of concentrated alone time prayer, I love it. I just genuinely, I feel like it's great. It's just coming out of holiday now as well. just again, I realized, but the thing that creates that allergic sense for me is, well, twofold, really. I found out over the years, or maybe you could add a third one in there, but certainly if I'm crunched for time, and I'm tired, to wake up early and pray and know I'm losing time when I've got a million other things going on. And I know the there is, okay, you're doing too much.
You're busy not to pray.
Yeah. All right. And that doesn't help, because that just adds, at that point. And you're like, oh, well, what am I supposed to even ditch? It's just an intense time. And so that makes it very difficult for me, because I feel like, got to get this done, got to wrap it up. Then the other thing is, when I come into it, it's almost like, maybe a little bit like preaching. If you just have to figure out a sermon every time you sit down, I mean, that's half your week. Whereas if you know what you want to do next, you're right in there, you've got a good slot, got a good routine. So I'd say routine and sort of content. So things like praying through a catechism, using the prayer box, or even just praying through a psalm or the Bible. I mean, if that's happening, it's just, it's there for you. You just keep going. If you've got a regular time, you just sit down. That helps. Sometimes it's a bit of a mix between, those to help. Maybe you need to keep it short, and you need to have worked through if that's okay or not. And then, added to that, you need to just figure out what an appropriate tool is. Like, you don't want to be praying through Psalm 119 at that point. Because it's going to be too long and too crazy. So maybe pick a verse from that, or a section from that. And then the other thing I was going to say is that obviously there is a spiritual component in prayer. You don't want to just psychologize it, but sometimes you're spiritually messed up or distracted, or being drawn to sin or hardened of heart, and those are times that you really don't want to face up to prayer, because to talk to God is going to bring about that conscience that you really don't want to expose. And I mean, in some sense, it's a no-brainer what you have to do there, but in another sense, it's the most difficult. So those are the three things I think that kind of get in the way for me.
Yeah, definitely. If you're pressed for time and you sit down and you haven't thought at all beforehand about what you're going to be doing, like that's what you're going to spend the whole time doing.
Yeah.
So you definitely need some to think about it beforehand. It's like it's not that you can't do spontaneous things that just arise at the moment as well. Of course you should, but
freedom comes from
making sure that you get regular time in, like daily time in or something like that. Then having done a little bit of forethought about what you're going to be covering. I think another thing for me is that I've just tried loads of different things. So things from different phone apps to mind mapping as I pray, to like having a very formal liturgy, like going through the Book of Common Prayer, through to using tactile aids like a like a rosary. I'd just like to clarify at this point that I do not pray the rosary.
Okay, that's a difference. That's a good point. You use prayer beads. You use beads. They're not even prayer beads. Not? They're just beads.
Yeah. I've never ever been part of the church council that has surrendered beads to any other religion or Catholicism. Beads are mine. I claim them.
All right. Beads are yours. And the idea there would just be that if you're praying through here's the problem with those. The bead idea, I think, is most valuable when you've got, hey, pray 15 Hail Marys. And you're like, all right, I need 15 beads.
You got to count them.
Exactly. And you're like, where did I? So obviously we don't.
Or you might say that's when it's at its most worthless.
Yeah, exactly. It's really, you've taken a wrong track. But I think especially with what Jordan was saying the other day and the Lutheran rosary, it makes a lot of sense to me if you're praying through the Ten Commandments, for example. I mean, what it does is, as you said earlier, it's kind of, it just, freedom is within a skeletal structure. So if you don't have the skeleton, you're just going to be a pile of mush, you need some level of skeletal structure. So okay, right, 10 Commandments, and something that, and if you know that you've sort of anchored yourself, and you don't have to worry about where you are. Now, like, you don't have to use a bead. You could just use a piece of paper or a bookmark or, whatever. The thing about a bead is, what I have noticed is, like, when I'm because the whole thing is you want to let go. You want to be praying. You don't want to have to worry about where you are, you know? You don't want to have to keep opening your eyes and coming back to, you know, wherever it is and worrying about your place and that sort of thing. And so if you're keeping your finger at a certain point in you know, on the bookmark or the Bible when you're reading through Exodus 20, or let's say we're just praying through the Ten Commandments at this point, you know, you always worry, like you move your finger, you know, while your eyes are closed, you just drift off. And then you're like, where was I? And you do. I have noticed you break it. You have to, you know, come back and find your place. And it's just, it is, if you have something tactile, I mean, often like a groove on the table or something, just like I'm feeling this, therefore I'm here, you know, it just allows you to know where you are while you're not even breaking your concentration in saying what you want to say to the Lord. And so I can imagine that prayer beads at that level, and you don't even need like a rosary, you just need, I don't know, anything, just something that, would work. Knots, a string, whatever. Yeah.
I mean, the way I make use of the beads in the rosary is just bears no resemblance to any of the either Catholic or Protestant liturgies, because of course the rosary is not. It's in its origin, it's entirely Catholic, and it makes me, when I think of its origins, it makes me entirely uncomfortable,
right,
to be associated with that. So I'm slow to tell people I make use of a rosary, just because they very easily get the wrong impression. But
right.
I'm just a very like tactile person, very fiddly, and I get distracted. So holding a book is better than nothing. But if there's some sort of progression to it, so like for a long time, I used to do mind maps with pen and paper. But what the irritating thing about that was, even though it kind of like took care of my distractedness and helped focus my mind, it just slowed me down. You know, so I was being unnecessarily taking a long time because I was, you know, trying to catch up with my own writing. And you don't really want that either. And I've tried sort of prayer journals and things like that, and all the same stuff. So like it just, for me, it although it was helpful in one sense, it became a hindrance in another sense. Whereas kind of at the moment, what I'm finding is just holding a bead and moving on to the next bead, is just giving me a bit of progression. And so I might be doing the Ten Commandments and using that to examine my own heart, but I might also be going through the Lord's Prayer. And even though it bears no resemblance to how many beads are in that little section, I still go through it like that. Or I might, you know, I mean, for me though, the big thing I've learned is that it's perfectly okay to not have to pray spontaneously all the time. You know, like make use of the prayers given to us in the scriptures. Like pray Paul's prayers, like Don Carson's book on prayer, the Spiritual Reformation.
Right.
Very, very helpful, because if nothing else, it just tells you, look, here are model prayers for you to pray. You know, and you just go through line by line and you just, you know, you pray that. Or the Lord's Prayer, or the actual Lord's Prayer in John 17, you know, where Jesus is praying. You know, take that and use that as a model for prayer. Or take the Psalms and pray through the Psalms. Like there is no better resource to help you find the words and to get your head where it needs to be very quickly than that. The difficulty, I will say, with Psalms,
is you get into some nuts there, and you're like, oh, what does that mean? And then next thing you know, you're down the road, you know, on a cerebral track.
People underestimate how theologically complicated the Psalms are.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you often get into like smashing babies against rocks, and you're just like,
dude,
what do I do?
Yeah. And on that point, there's a great answer to what you do with that on the 2A Sojourner podcast. It's called Kleinian Theology. It's great. But lest we take the wrong track, even in this conversation, let's just stay on this for a little while longer. One of the things that has been praying the Psalms. I know, who's that guy? Donald Whitney, was it? The spiritual disciplines guy. Like I remember, you know, just becoming a Christian, and obviously we're coming from the charismatic thing. So, you know, interesting. I remember talking about the rosary and looking at J.I. Packer's Keeping in Step with the Spirit. And he's like, well, praying the tongues is it's not the Bible's tongues. It's not in any way connected to anything the Bible says you should do. It's kind of like a little thing that babies stop doing when they learn to speak. So it's weird that you're doing that, but it's kind of like the rosary. So just keep on rolling with it. He's just like, I'm like, wow, that's so much right there because,
You just threw that in there.
I mean, dude, firstly, is it okay that it's just like the rosary, number one? Number two, what do you mean it's not, it's not the real thing? Number three, how does that even work? But, in hindsight, I totally agree. It really praying in tongues for a charismatic typically acted in exactly that way. It was a way to just get your mind into the right frame of reference, just basically clear the space, find a way to just enter into a prayer, reflective, meditative state of mind, and then to when you're there, stop and then pray a little bit, and then go back to praying in tongues. Of course, you think you're connecting the whole way through, but bottom line, it's just a solid prayer tool at and at that level, the rosary thing is really helpful. I remember, but just the other day, when we were talking to Jordan, what I did was I just got off and I was quite taken by what he said there with the whole the method of prayer, and I looked up a few videos there on what the Lutherans typically do with the Lutheran rosary and everything. So it looks pretty much like the Roman Catholic rosary thing, except that they use Luther's Small Catechism, which involves the Ten Commandments, and then what is the other one? The Lord's Prayer, and then the Apostles' Creed, or I'm not sure if it's exactly in that order. And a lot of Lutherans don't like to do that because of its associations, but apparently it's a thing. Of course, the Anglicans are open to it as well. And just looking at that particular method, I'm not sure about the Anglican one. I haven't looked at that yet. But, I mean, I love it. I really think that, if you pray like that every day, bam, I have no problem with that.
You can do a lot worse than just going through the Lord's Prayer every day.
Oh,
you can do a lot worse than that. Like, I had a big argument with a friend of mine. He said, "Oh, but you're not meant to just recite the Lord's Prayer." I'm like, well, you kind of are. Like, it's exactly like in one of the Gospels, Jesus says, "This is what you should say," and another one he says, "This is how you should pray."
Yeah.
So I think the Lord's Prayer, in Jesus' own teaching, probably was intended for both.
It's skeletal, it's
simply recite, and then it was intended to expound.
Expand on, yeah, exactly. And it's amazing because it's hard to pray that prayer without drifting into an exposition of it. I mean, it is amazing, especially if you have something like a way to just stop and start. It's quite profound because you're going, "Our Father," as a starting point for prayer. Wow. And then I like the way, again, I had no idea. This is just like from the time we spoke to Jordan, but I like the little beads in between the big beads, which are meant to get you to think about, like little things on the way. So how does this commandment apply positively? How is it negatively? And you just, wow, that's super effective. So anyways, bottom line is there's that. Another thing that has just been extremely awesome for me personally, I don't know, everyone's got their little things here, but you were talking about praying the Psalms. And coming back to Donald Whitney, he's like a big advocate of that. But the way he would talk about it is, listen, just pray the Psalm and then pray whatever you want about the Psalm.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was ever comfortable with that because it just might not be what that Psalm is saying. And I don't know that you should really. It is a good use of Scripture to just use it like a springboard. It's okay when you totally know what it means, because then, you've got that anchor in your mind. But if you're going to do that with the Psalms, or the Proverbs for that matter, they're very, very difficult to understand. You're going to have to invest a significant amount of time to first figure that out so that you can then move forward. So what I found was, by all means, go ahead and study the Psalms. And when you're at the place where you can do that. But stick to, clearer portions where you, like the Lord's Prayer, where you have the Ten Commandments, you have no doubt, even the Apostles' Creed at that level. You want something that you are just not going to question, but rather use as an anchor. Yeah.
Saying the Apostles' Creed, or the Nicene Creed, or the Athanasian Creed, or any of those early creeds, that we accept. I think people who've never done this before underestimate or fail to realize that it has a liturgical form, which is a prayer. So when you say the creed, you're not simply stating dry dogma. You're
No.
actually praying to God, confessing your faith to Him. And it's a powerful experience when you say, I believe,
It really is.
I
Yeah.
believe. And obviously in church, we believe. Like it's a powerful thing. It really is. And it's a great way to jumpstart. So normally when I pray, I start by saying the Apostles' Creed, sometimes the Nicene, sometimes the Athanasian.
Great.
Because it's just a great way to like ground yourself in
Yeah.
the historic Christian faith.
Especially in the Apostles' Creed, I believe in the forgiveness of sins.
Yeah.
Before you actually confess your sins, and then ask God to forgive you. I mean, do you just to
Absolutely.
say that you believe that I actually believe that the one I'm going to pray to now is listening to me, and even you go through, you confess the 5 solas of the Reformation, something along those lines. It got me thinking with that
exactly.
Lutheran,
Or you could take some of the early Christian creeds in the scriptures as well, like the matters of first importance in 1 Corinthians 15 or something like
exactly.
that. Like
something.
This is the thing. You can be endlessly creative.
Yeah.
With this,
but you don't want to have to get creative every single time you sit down to pray.
That's it.
So that's where, something like whether it be a rosary or a prayer, if you have little documents. We've spoken before. I have actually dedicated a whole episode to this, but something I often use is the mirror method. Really, you're just looking at an acronym that's going to help you to engage, and you want your next thing. In fact, what I did was I put a little, it's not a rosary by any stretch of imagination, but like a little bracelet thing with, those beads that say, with the letters on them, because you write your name on, for the kids.
Yep.
It was like a little holiday project, but, it said like mirror. And so, so they could go through mirror whenever they looked at the passage, and they love it. So, there's that. And, you just want to, it's all I'm trying to demonstrate here is that figure it out, come up with the thing that you think is going to be really good just to go into it. If you feel like, oh, that's a big task, I don't even know where to start with that. What do I confess first? Well, then just pick something that one of the many giants of the faith have done for you. You've got Luther's, method of prayer, which is great. I mean, he actually wrote a book called The Method of Prayer. You got Matthew Henry's Method of Prayer. They're all super simple.
Calvin. He's got a short book on Christian prayer.
That's right. Or you could just literally, just sit down for 5 seconds, figure it out. Take the mainstay of what's been done. Yeah.
I find, in this regard, the Book of Common Prayer enormously helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's Anglican, and so for non-Anglicans, we kind of, feel a bit weird about using the Anglican prayer book. But I found it better than the Presbyterian prayer book or the Presbyterian liturgy book that we used to use when I was a Presbyterian. And I think it's better than the Episcopal one in the States. It's better than the Methodist one that I've come across. I just think of all the historic Protestant liturgies out there, like it's immense. It is absolutely immense. And so I've created, I sort of know my way around it now, so that I can open it up and just go, okay, I'm going to do that part of the litany, and then I'm going to do that prayer, and I'm going to read that psalm, and then I'm going to, if you get to know it and you just think about it a bit beforehand, and you can mark like where you want to go through your prayer time. There's a great app if you're totally new to it and you want to check it out. The Church of England actually has an app which you can download, and it takes you through the morning prayers, the evening prayers, the midday prayers. You can do it as many times as you want. But there's also a kind of summarized version. I think it's called Daily Prayer. I think that's and it's like an abbreviated version of the Book of Common Prayer, where it will just give you the kind of highlights, but it's wonderfully simple, and it'll give you a taste of what it's like. But I've just found that like a really, really powerful experience, and to, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy is a great thing to introduce. The thing about it that I love is it's just so wonderfully kind of oriented around the forgiveness of sins. Like you get the real impression as you're praying through the Book of Common Prayer that the whole thing of this is that Christ has forgiven your sins. Like that's the whole heart of of your prayer and worship. And it's just brilliant. Like, especially if you're feeling guilty or you're just feeling like a rubbish Christian, no better comfort than to just be led by these other Christian leaders,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you've got, I mean, for me, the equivalent there would be Value Vision. I've been using that for a while now. I've got you actually got it for me via your Amazon gift voucher many years ago. It's the leather-bound sort of thing, it's just really beautiful. And man, that thing is just, I found it to be absolute dynamite. It's got a great table of contents, so you know where you want to go, easy to map. And you just are, honestly, it's, you don't frequently run into, that we were talking about the problems with the Psalms and the way that you sometimes, there's almost none of that. You just know where you are the whole time, and yet it's just beautifully stated. If you love Puritan theology, it's coming through all the way through. So you've got that. You really shouldn't feel weirded out by using the Anglican Common Book of Prayer. I mean, it's Christian heritage stuff. I mean, so you got the Lutheran Book of Prayer, you got the Anglican Book of Prayer, you got the Puritan Book of Prayer, so to speak. You got all the catechisms, you got all the confessions. You've got, really, there's a wealth. If you're feeling weirded out about choosing a little denominational book, then just go Acts 29, because we take it all.
Yeah, what's up? Well,
we just literally look at that.
We are one church.
That's right.
We are the Holy Catholic Church,
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What we do want to stay away from, though, is I was thinking about it as well, looking at it this week, was the I know it's not as prominent in the Greek Orthodox rosary.
I've not gone down that road. Yeah.
So it interested me because they didn't have the little Marian mediation thing. And but I mean, they use it they don't really pray the rosary. What they do is they just, I think it originated with the Jesus prayer, and they just say it again and again and again.
Jesus
and again
Christ,
and again.
Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. That one.
That one, yes. And the whole idea was, as you say it, a bazillion times, you enter into a kind of transcendent meditative state, which was a particular means through which to spiritually connect with God. So we want to abominate all of those sorts of approaches. I think that's literally what Jesus is talking about when he says, you're just heaping up empty words. But I did have one thought about that. And here's what I want to be careful of. You could imagine it's very easy. Especially as a Protestant, looking at a Roman Catholic or an Eastern Orthodox we'll place them in the Pharisee category, right? And we'll put us as the tax collector that just has really got the heart of the gospel down. We go home justified. We've even got the doctrine of justification down. We know what's going on. But really, at the end of the day, it might be the other way around. Very easily could be. You can imagine imagine someone going into whatever situation they're in, Greek Orthodox, and they are weighted down with the conviction of sin. And they're like, what? Listen, they're on their knees. It's the equivalent of beating their breast if they're just working through these beads and just desiring to be forgiven, crying out for nothing else but mercy. And here comes the smug Protestant. He's like, well, thank God I'm not like that guy. At least I got my doctrine down. So you want to stay far away from that.
I just recently heard the story of a conversion of an Orthodox, a guy who was a Protestant became Orthodox. And the reason why he converted was because he never heard an earnest confession of sins like he heard in the Orthodox Church. In all of his evangelical days.
Wow.
It was barely a thing. You can't even remember them confessing sin in church,
Yeah.
Whereas he goes to Orthodox and they are just taking it seriously. And he was really impressed by that. And he thought, do you know what? This is closer to the gospel than where I was.
And
he
you
might
could
not be wrong.
so easily imagine Jesus just looking at a Protestant and a guy on his knees, maybe mistakenly chanting through something, but just trying to find a way for God to forgive him, and just go, you know what? Actually, though the understanding is a problem for this one, he goes home justified. Because that's really exactly what was going on there, right?
Totally.
The tax collector didn't have a great understanding, probably
he wasn't the most orthodox.
No, and
that
yet
scenario,
he had what was important. And so, just as a final word on this, just remember, just stay the heck away from showmanship or just, I don't know, all these funny little things, ceremonies that just get in the way, or just pride and, in our own doctrine, and just come before the Lord broken. At the end of the day, a broken heart, a contrite heart, he won't despise, is the bottom line. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also pray together. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, I suck at praying on my own. I want to, and go pray with another Christian. Like that can be a huge help,
Totally.
Huge help. That's what we were made to do, was to pray together. I think we make too much of, or misunderstand Jesus' intentions behind the go into the prayer closet sort of thing. It wasn't advocating asceticism. It was advocating, and not, like you've just said, non-showiness.
Yeah.
But pray with others. It can be a huge help. Learn from their prayers.
Yeah, it's crazy with Zoom meetings now and all that. I mean, there's really just no. It really puts that sort of thing. You could phone a buddy up and pray with him. It used to be kind of weird being on the phone, but not anymore. Not anymore. All our elders meetings.
Where's the best place for us to go and pray with others?
Oh, wait, let me take a guess. Hang on. On the beach.
No, not the beach.
Right.
Not the beach, Mike.
Wait. Let me.
Not Starbucks.
Wait. I got this. In the street.
Nope. Wrong again, Mike.
No,
it might be in the street.
Yeah, that's right. Under the apple tree, if that's where church is. What is church, Andre?
Church is the gathering of the saints around the Word of God to praise and worship God and to build and exalt each other.
Yeah, or you could just say where the Word is rightly preached and the sacraments are rightly administered.
Yeah, that's even better.
Like Calvin said. But anyway, all right. So go there. I mean, yeah, amen. That's the oasis in the pilgrimage, right there. Mm-hmm. And that's where you pray. If that's where the action of the Christian life happens. So I suppose this will then get dropped just before church to help you realize that. Even though I was planning on dropping it not before church, but now I've just changed my gear.
Just change your mind. Yeah.
Alrighty, good. So happy praying.
You should challenge people though that actually, as they end this podcast, to pray as soon as they end it
in Latin.
Yeah, or in English Latin.
Or you
or
mean
in
just
Afrikaans.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. No, totally.
But
do that. I don't like to do that because I hate it when people do that to me. I'm like in the bathtub listening to this thing. I'm not gonna, No,
that's exactly what you should do. You should not walk away without having started it.
Bad illustration. Firstly, I don't bath, I always shower. Secondly, what I meant to say was like your kid's in the bathtub and you got another kid sort of like draping over you and you're trying to do something productive by listening to the stupid podcast. It's just put it extra heavy on you now because now you have to pray straight afterwards, and if you don't do that, you're a failure.
And then your kid's making really inappropriate comments about your private parts as well, and then you're feeling all awkward about that.
Exactly. So what hey, if you do happen to be in this really awesome place to pray right now, fine, go ahead, Probably you've just used all your prayer time on listening to this, so that's not going to work.
Not ideal.
And there is another thing to say, just maybe on a roundup here, is that, when Jesus prayed, one thing that was super striking about it is that it was just, that's it? Oh, like what, so, just that, and he was just so to the point and so straight there. And I don't think that means you have to spend 5 minutes praying, or obviously Jesus himself prayed a lot and spent whole nights in prayer. But it just, I think what you have to take away from it, if you've got 5 minutes, pray for 5 minutes. Pray well for 5 minutes, stop praying, and then keep going. Sometimes I feel like it's probably a bad thing to keep. If you got a lot of stuff to do, I know the whole big Lutheran thing as well. I'm so busy, I must spend the first 2 hours praying, and I haven't really got a major theological defense for this, but sometimes I feel like maybe it's better that you just get up and do what you need to do. It's almost like, the guy who's too spiritual to work and therefore can't eat. Paul just tells that guy, listen, if you don't work, you're not going to eat. So start working so that you can start eating.
Kevin Young's already written that book, bro.
Has he really?
It's called Don't Just Pray, Do Something.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. Well, I cautiously then
I think
commend
it's
that
Kevin
book.
DeYoung. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, sorry. I was about to go on a different tangent. But anyway, there you
Don't
go.
do that.
Listen,
Don't do that. All right. We'll leave you with that big question mark over Kevin DeYoung.
Oh, but don't call it the rosary if you're praying as a Protestant.
Yeah.
Rosary implies Mary.
Yeah.
Call it the tulipery. That's how Calvinists use beads. Tulipery.
Tulipery. So we should do this. We should do this. We should we start with the skull, and then we beat our way up to the cross, and then we do like somewhere a little 5 solar tulip, you know, and then a little. Dude, let's just make an awesome 2/8
We can reverse
Sojourner.
it so that where the Mary bit was on the rosary, that can be the 5 solas bit, and that can be after the cross.
The 5 sola bit works well instead of the rosary because it's like you're confessing the priesthood of all believers, you know? You're saying solus Christus at that point. So at that, at that very point, you're going, it's like a finger to the man. Which is, it's kind of cool. So we just make the most rebellious.
Like sticking it to the Catholics when you're praying.
Oh boy, talk about just undoing everything we've just said. Sorry about that. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. We'll leave it there before this gets out of hand. All right. Thanks, bro. I'm playing out.
Alrighty.
Here we go. You ready?
See you later.
No, wait. You're not going anywhere.
Oh, we got to do the thing. Yeah, sorry.
We're playing.